Hi, thanks for joining us for the message for May the 15th. I hope you're well. And I have three stories that I'm eager to share. One of which, or two of which you may know, but one which is quite personal and only two of us in the world, I think, so far know it, maybe. Um, the story is going to serve an exploration in a few minutes of what it is to be a person of faith. And I'm going to be pointing out that all human beings function by faith, and that without faith, no human being can function. You can't even get out of bed in the morning without taking a step of faith. And in actual fact, staying in bed may also involve quite a lot of faith as well. In a sense, I want to suggest that faith is how we join up the gaps between the dots. Did you ever do those join the dot pictures? I did some as a child because it was really useless as with drawing. So it was quite fascinating for me to find number one and then with my pencil go to number two, number three, number four. And as you go joining those dots, there comes a point at which you project from the points of certainty the picture itself, the picture that's going to emerge when you've finished. And faith is simply a projection from a point of knowledge, right? Faith and knowledge go hand in hand together. They're not different things at all. Anyway, three stories, I said, so here come the stories. Let's start with Chuangzi. Chuangzi, an ancient Chinese philosopher, that is, a philosopher in ancient China. I don't know how old he was at the time. One morning he woke up and he'd had this beautiful and liberating dream, which he was really rather reluctant to release and let go. In his dream, Chuangzi had been a butterfly, flying from flower to flower, free to make choices of things. I'll go over here, I'll go over there. That looks like a nice one. Enjoying the sensation of flight, which seemed an unbelievable liberation. Wonderful. And Chuangzi so loved this dream that waking up was painful and disappointing, and he tried to hang on to the dream in the first moments of waking. And then a thought came to him, being a philosopher. He said, how do I know that in fact that was a dream and what's happening to me now is reality? How do I know whether Chuangzi had a dream last night in which I was a butterfly, rather than I'm a butterfly currently having a dream that I'm a human philosopher? I'm not sure he ever sorted it out, but this is a little story which is sometimes used with primary school children to help nudge the brain into rethinking and to thinking, how actually do we know anything is true? We take so much on trust. And in fact, virtually everything you assume you know to be true, you've taken on trust. Hardly anything have you found out for yourself and proven to be absolutely certain. You've taken virtually everything on trust. And in fact, you have no knowledge that you haven't gained through some form of faith. The teenage beauty queen was a member of my fellowship, and say about 27, 28 years ago this happened. And she came to me with a problem that she wanted me to sort out. She had just won a competition which gave her a place in a final, all expenses paid, to Las Vegas. So she was over the moon and very keen to share the good news with me. But she also wanted my advice on something. Her win had brought her this all expenses paid trip to Las Vegas, but she's still quite a young teenager. She has to identify one of her parents, another chaperone, and at least one more trusted adult to accompany her, etc. So she's got this all expenses paid for herself and a team of 3, 4, 5 people, I can't remember how many, to travel with her to Las Vegas, all expenses met. She said, I've told my team that a condition of being on my team is no gambling when we're in Las Vegas because I'm a Christian. And she looked at me and said, but the thing is, I don't really know why Christians are against gambling because I don't recall reading anything about that in the Bible. Can you tell me where it is or why it is that Christians don't believe in gambling? Well, I had to tell her there's only some Christians who don't believe in gambling. Many Christians, probably the majority, don't believe in heavy gambling, but loads of Christians are very comfortable with low-level gambling. I said it's a matter of personal decision. This bothered her because she wanted a very simple answer. I know what I'm to do. I'm a Christian. And it has to be like this. My pastor's going to explain why it's got to be like that. And suddenly he's wanting me to think for myself. Well, she's a really intelligent person. And I was very glad to take the opportunity to help her see that now she had reached mid-teen years, it was certainly time to start reassessing what she assumed to be knowledge, what she had taken for granted because trusted people had told her that this is the way, and to reassess things in the light of her own faith, her own reading of the Bible, and weighing up the different influences around her. So I sent her off to Las Vegas saying, well, stick with what you believe to be true, but don't miss the opportunity to see that this is a moment that teaches you may want to reassess how you've come to believe what you believe and to do what you do, and to reassess if in fact that is what you think and what you believe and how you're going to live. Third story is the centurion, and it's in the Bible. It's in Luke chapter 7, where an officer of the occupying army wants Jesus to command the healing of the centurion's servant, who is seriously ill. So knowing that for Jesus as a Jew to come to the house of a Gentile, a member of the occupying forces, would render Jesus to be ceremonially, ritually unclean, unfit for a period of time. This officer says, oh, you don't need to come to my house. Listen, I work in the army. I know how these things go. There are those who are in charge of me. They tell me what to do. I do it. There are those I'm in charge of. I tell them what to do. They do it. If you command that my servant will be healed, he'll be healed. You don't need to come to my house and do any of the laying on of hands and all that stuff. Just give the order, because that's the kind of authority you have. Jesus was amazed by this guy and said, you know what, I haven't found such a trust in God, such faith, even in the people who claim to follow God. But here's this guy, just listen to him. He's so confident in God's action. So those are 3 stories, and I love that third one. It's a big favourite of mine. Listen, whether you're buying a carton of milk or studying the physics of the Milky Way, you will need to exercise faith. Otherwise, you can't implement and explore knowledge. Knowledge and faith are buddies. They work together like the 2 wheels of a bike or something. You have to make some projections from your point of knowledge, and they are projections, they are steps of faith. And sometimes it will be presented to you as if there are people who work only by knowledge and people, religious folk who work by faith. Do you know what? That's just not the truth. It's not remotely correct. There is no functioning human being who doesn't function by faith, by making decisions that such and such is trustworthy, that this person is trustworthy. I can relate to them as a friend, as a family member, as a colleague, or whatever it may be. And when that trust proves to be misplaced, then those relationships are badly damaged and often terminated. Or you find a method of finding out knowledge, of exploring truth, and you put your trust in it without knowing for certain. What you cannot know for certain is that is always absolutely going to lead you to the absolute truth. Nobody knows that. Chuang-Tzu had a point when he woke up from his dream and started thinking. So there's two dynamics to being a person of faith who follows Jesus that I want to just draw out from all this. There's the thought that faith is in something that we believe to be reliably true, even though we cannot yet finally prove it in an absolute proof sense. There's less than a handful of things which you can do that within life. So you have to do it all the time. The writer to the Hebrews, it's in the Bible, Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1, 2 and 3, says that it is a step of faith for us as Christian people to believe that the universe is not an accident, and that what is visible has been commanded to exist out of what is invisible. And that's so the world exists as part of a universe with a purpose, in other words. So that's a step of faith that we take. Don't forget, folks, that to say that's not true. The universe is not here on purpose. There is no function or intention behind it. It's just what it is, or it's just an accident that happens. It's just the way the physics happen to go, or something. Don't forget that is the same size step of faith. It's not that you believing that God created the universe, calls it into being, has a purpose for its existence and your own. To say, well, we can't prove that, and then to choose, so I choose not to believe that, is the same size step of faith, rationally, right? But you've seen something that makes you go, I think God done it. And I think God's still doing it. I think God is there and God is up to something. The next step of our faith is faith in God as a person, not as the sovereign of a process, a creator who's kicked a process into existence and then governs it in some curious way that's hard to get our hands on. But as Christians, actually, we trust God. We trust God's love, God's grace, God's character. We trust that God has revealed who God is and what God's like in Jesus. And so we've made the decision to opt for Christ. That's our faith decision, because we can't see everything that leads to that, but we see some things. Christian faith is not superstition. It's not faith that disregards knowledge. All human beings join up the dots of their knowledge. There are points in which they're very, very confident, and there are points in which they're not so confident. And faith allows the picture, the joining up of the dots, to emerge, whatever version of reality you think is true. And that is how faith works in a general sense for all people. But for us, it's a personal faith in the person of God through the person of Jesus Christ. It's a relational faith. We trust the being, not only a set of suggested ways of looking at the universe. As we've seen in recent times, following the science is very hard. But here's the truth about our faith in Christ. One, it is knowledge-based. It's not mere guesswork. We are joining up the dots in a particular way. Other people have seen the same dots and not joined them up the same way. That is true. But that's their faith, and this is ours. All right? So there are no faith-free options, if you like. in life, in being a human being. It's faith one way or another. And we put our faith in the person and way of God as revealed to us in Jesus. So that's what we do. And also we don't resist new knowledge. Right? Superstition goes, I don't like that, doesn't fit, so I don't believe it. Whereas the Christian faith is totally open to what is certain knowledge when that knowledge is available. But we don't kid ourselves that the world follows the science, because we all know that actually we don't. Nobody's following the science right now, otherwise the climate change stuff wouldn't be still going on, the pandemic would be behaving better, etc. What are we as people of faith? We're people who notice the world is in a mess. We notice that ourselves are insufficient to fix our own place in it all and to make the world work better. We haven't been able to sort out our own shortcomings, never mind put the world right. And we noticed God and began to trust in God. And we noticed Jesus and recognized in Jesus God's self-expression in a human form. And we began to trust in the who of Jesus, and therefore in what Jesus said and in what Jesus did for us. We've started to follow him by faith. God bless you.